right, welcome to the very first episode of EchoVideo Podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Tapley. Today I have with me Bart Streppel and Shawn Gorsline. How's it going, guys?
Doing pretty good. Nice.
Yeah, I'm doing good.
All right, perfect. So 2020 is over. We're into 2021. A lot of stuff happened, obviously. A lot of good, a lot of bad. But today we're just going to focus on just kind of the movies, the media we were kind of enjoying during lockdown, during times being just kind of around everybody, being in our houses all the time. All right, let's start it off. What was your favorite movies of the year? Who wants to start?
Yeah, okay, I can jump in. So for me, I think it would have to be Aaron Sorkin's The Trial of the Chicago 7. So I saw that at the little art house theater I work at as soon as it opened back up. It was like right in time after lockdown. So yeah, I went to go see that with my buddy, and I loved it. So one main reason, the score and the editing, and you know Aaron Sorkin's dialogue, it's snappy, it's kind of confrontational, it kind of keeps everything going. So the score complemented that really well. So there's a couple moments in the courtroom, and then I guess once again in the courtroom, when things are kind of heating up, and they're talking about things that happen and kind of flashing back to those events, and it's like this orchestral theme kind of brewing up, and the dialogue keeps going faster and faster, and the editing keeps getting snappier and snappier until it kind of just boils over. And I don't know, seeing that in the theater again after lockdown, after such a relatively crappy 2020 so far, it's just very exciting, and it just made me really appreciate why I like going to theaters, for that experience, to just be there gripping the seat,
For sure, because I think that was the one thing I kind of missed. I went to the theater maybe twice the whole 2020, and I honestly only went once. And the only movie I saw in theaters was The Invisible Man. I think that was another pretty good movie. It was kind of, I would say, one of the better earlier movies in the year to kind of end on. I feel like there was that, and I think Onward and Sonic the Hedgehog. I think Invisible Man was probably the stronger film of all of the ones that were out at that time. It was definitely a shocker. I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. It just kind of seemed like this cheesy kind of Blumhouse horror film, and then next thing I know, I'm getting all these great. It was a good time. I really enjoyed it. I saw it with some friends, so it was kind of a good time to kind of end going to the theater with everybody. So I really enjoyed it. Is basically the end thing is what I'm trying to say. Shawn, what about you?
Really, it's funny because you say that going to the theater only about 2 times in the year, which I can fully relate to that. I only went to the theater once, and the only movie I saw in the theater was Tenet, and the only reason I went to see that was because that was the only way you could see it.
Yep.
So I mean, it was really the only movie that still to me felt like I was really watching a movie this year too. I think because of that a little bit, just because every other movie I'd watched at home and it was like, oh, yes, it's a movie, but it kind of feels like you're just watching content rather than this big event. You're going out to watch some big piece of film. I did really enjoy Tenet, though. It was very enjoyable to watch, and I loved all the elements of it. The music, for sure, that one really inspired me a lot in the film, and I've been working on projects of my own that have kind of been inspired by that. I love kind of how both the film and its themes, and I don't want to say too much to people that might not have watched it because I really recommend to watch it, but its themes are really well incorporated into the music and really every element of the film. So yeah, I mean that's like my top film I would say for me this year, just because it has so many great elements to it, and I think it's well done. Wouldn't say it's the
Yeah.
best Nolan film, but it's definitely a good one.
No, I definitely understand that, and especially what you were saying, where it was the one movie of the year that didn't feel like content; it felt like a movie. I definitely feel like there was a lack of that, even just because. I mean, you watch trailers on your phone all the time, but it's just missing that element of going to the theater, sitting in the seat, and just being hit by that surround sound. Just like it's just a feeling you kind of have to experience in the theater. You can't really get that from home. Even if I feel like if you had a home theater, I feel like you're going to be slightly missing that.
Well, that's literally how I was watching most of my films. I have like a 5.1 setup with like most of the year I had like a projector screen set up too, and I've had that. That's just my family has that set up. Even watching it on something like that, definitely it's not the same experience. It really
No,
isn't.
for sure, and that's what I feel like when 2020 was before COVID hit and everything went to hell. I think it was going to be kind of a really great year for movies and theaters. Like we had the next James Bond coming out, we had Black Widow, we had Dune to be come out, which was one I was really
Batman.
looking forward to, and now it's just kind of gone. We're waiting till this year, and if even, I mean, just kind of with the still kind of what's going on, I think maybe we might even not see it till 2022. Fingers crossed it comes out this year. But I feel like, yeah, exactly what you said is there was a lot of more content feeling movies than there were big theatrical films that came out. Just to kind of put ourselves back on the tracks of the topic here, I think the other movie going when lockdown actually started was a movie called Bliss. And again, this movie came out exclusively to Shudder, which is a streaming service. It came out pretty early into February. I ended up checking it out maybe April, March. It just kind of hit me by surprise, just how good it was. It had a really, really great soundtrack. It just every element of it was made so perfectly. It just kind of it kind of reminded me of a really good straight to video VHS. If that's kind of it had kind of a cheesy factor to it where it was just grotesque violence and gore, but then it had kind of a really good story that you were invested in and watching and having a fun time. And honestly, I put it on as background noise because I didn't expect it to be as good as it was, and then I was just kind of sucked into it from the score and the movie and the elements and the filmmaking and stuff. So it's a really good movie. I think if you haven't checked it out, you should definitely check it out. Definitely worth a subscription to Shudder, I would say. Not sponsored. Other than that, anybody else? Bart, what about you? What other movies did you have for this year?
Well, so I watched The Trial of Chicago 7 right after first lockdown, and then I watched Freaky literally a day before the second lockdown started, like the code red. Well, like my work closed, like the theater closed, basically. That was actually a surprisingly good movie. Because, like, I don't know, you watch a trailer. I think it's Blumhouse. It's just another, I don't know, like Don't Breathe or The Lights Off kind of thing.
For sure,
It looked fine, but it actually had a lot of fun character. And I got to say, seeing Vince Vaughn again, he owns the movie. It's so much fun watching him
Yeah, 'cause
like act as this girl.
Vince Vaughn just kind of disappeared. Like he was in, I think he had a small role, or I guess not technically small, but he was in Hacksaw Ridge, and then he just disappeared again.
Yeah, he had
And
like Cell Block 99, True Detective, but like even that was pretty 2017, 2018. So
Yeah.
it was nice. It was nice seeing him come back, and he just absolutely killed it. And it's so much fun. I'm really glad I got to see that, like an actually fun movie before, the second lockdown hit and everything went back down to hell. So
Yeah.
I'd recommend it.
And
All right,
the
awesome.
person, was it the director that did Happy Death Day? It was the same. I think it was the same
Yes,
person.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that vibe, just a little bit. Actually, no, quite a bit more gory. The deaths are actually very creative, and it's kind of like Happy Death Day. Like it really balances the line between just outrageous gore and blood and whatnot, and actually like nice character development and funny. It's a good time.
That's good. Yeah, because a lot of horror movies that kind of come out, especially because it was one of, I think it came out in the summer. You said it was kind of meant to be a summer blockbuster, and you would kind of be expecting it to be a little on the cheap or lazier side. That's kind of what I've usually come to expect from summer horror movies. I mean, I've been surprised countless times, but usually I don't really bat them an eye. Just sometimes it's just the marketing. It's just all in your face, kind of flashy, gory. Look at all the kills and stuff. It's just kind of and the other thing I hate about that kind of marketing is just it kind of brings in an audience to the theater where they're just in the theater to get out of the house. They're not there to watch the movie. They're just there to be in the theater with their friends, and that kind of ruins the movie for me because they're kind of messing around, having fun in the theater, and I'm there trying to watch the movie. They're there just trying to have fun. I feel like that's definitely a banter. The other movies that I saw this year, one that I just kind of happened to click on Amazon. Again, it was another. Didn't get to see this one in theaters. It was an Amazon exclusive film, Blow the Man Down, and it came out again. It came out I think around March, maybe April again. It was just kind of a fun movie. Caught me off guard a little bit. It was kind of I can't remember the genre specifically, but I think it was just kind of a thriller thriller mystery type of film. And it was a really great watch. I was entertained consistently all the way through. Really great acting, really great directing. There was times when it kind of reminded me of almost like an Edgar Wright film or a Wes Anderson film, just with the way the framing and the editing went, just very reminiscent of that. And it's always good to see directors, if he was paying homage to those filmmakers, it's always good to kind of see homages to other filmmakers in films, in my opinion. So it's definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it. Filled with lots of twists and turns, so it'll definitely keep you entertained. I definitely recommend it.
A movie I kind of forgot that came out this year was Borat.
Oh,
I
yeah.
completely forgot that it came out this year. It didn't feel like it felt like it's been around for like so many years already. Obviously, the original being around, but that one was just a roller coaster ride all the way throughout, and honestly, like I enjoyed the crap out of that. It was so good. I love films that are just like or any kind of like show or any kind of content that's just like this high production value, insanity and chaos. And so, having it be around, especially during right now, and having it, take place in 2020 as well, and take all of those elements and really use them to tell the story uniquely is really cool. And I was kind of surprised too, watching it, how much of like COVID stuff was actually like a part of it. Obviously, all that stuff that they were doing was filming real people's reactions or interactions with people. But having filmed it earlier in the year before anything started happening, I was surprised how they integrated all that stuff really well. And it was just an enjoyable film. I'm not saying it's a perfect film by any means, but it was a good time. I had a good time watching it.
I think going off what you said, the Borat 2, like I've never seen the first Borat, but watching the second one, I just, it was advertised so much on Amazon. I was like, okay, what the hell? I like Sacha Baron Cohen. I'll check it out. And, I mean, you'll know the ending with, what's his name, Rudy Giuliani, where he's, like, sending in, actually, I wouldn't spoil it, but there's this ending scene with Rudy Giuliani, who's, like, I guess Trump's right-hand man. There's probably a more official term for it. Doesn't matter, but they actually got him in the movie without him being aware. Like, it was almost a documentary, but it wasn't. And I just thought like they had like a fake actor, maybe like deep faked it or something, but they actually had it, and they just completely humiliated him, and it was incredible. Because I had to look back afterwards. I was like, oh my god, they actually had him. It's just nuts, all the stuff they did to him.
All right. Yeah, I unfortunately wasn't able. I just didn't have the time to kind of check it out. I was thinking I definitely will eventually check it out. The last film I'm kind of going to talk about today is I think was definitely probably the one that in my opinion was the one kind of worth watching, and that was Disney Pixar's Soul. And it wasn't even the second Pixar film to be released this year. And that's not usually Pixar doesn't release 2 movies in a year, and I think they do that just to kind of not take attention from either of the films. But the first film was Onward, and that was, in my opinion, just kind of disappointing. Wasn't it felt more like a Disney Animation Studios than a Pixar. To me, Pixar films are kind of adult stories told in a childlike way. That's my opinion. And Onward was just kind of that Disney animation kind of feeling, which isn't a bad thing by no means. Just in my opinion, I was a little disappointed by it. But when Disney Pixar's Soul came out, I thought that was an incredible film. It had some, and again, you can't really say Pixar has great animation. That's like saying the sun rises in the morning. They're always getting better. They always have groundbreaking animation, and this film was no exception. It was absolutely breathtaking to watch, and it just had like a great story. It was really entertaining to watch. I'm kind of a sucker for jazz movies, and just to hear the soundtrack and the jazz in this movie was unbelievable, and it was just a fantastic movie with a lot of heart and yeah, to pun intended, a lot of soul into it. So it's definitely worth a watch if you haven't. I believe they put it on Disney Plus for free streaming. Feel free to edit this out. I don't want to sponsor fucking Disney Plus, but no, definitely worth the watch if you haven't seen it. Probably one of the better films to check out this year. If you were going to pick a certain number, definitely make this one of your the ones to check out this year.
All right, will do. I haven't seen it yet, but
yeah, it's really good actually. I watched it as well. It's fantastic.
See, I thought it was going to be like another one like Milan where you had to pay $24, and I didn't really want to do that. But if it's free, then definitely I'll watch it.
Yeah, I was so happy it was one of those ones that you could just watch for free. It's great.
I think they had learned from their mistake. Actually, I don't know if it was like a financial failure, but I don't know. It seemed off-putting paying for subscription, and on top of that, a movie.
Yeah, I don't know how well Mulan did, but
yeah, I was. I think Soul you were able to pay for it, and then they just made it available after Christmas. I think so. I think you were for like the first couple of weeks of December, you were able to stream it through pay. I'm not 100% on this. I think you were able to pay for it, and then they just made it free, which honestly is kind of like, hey, you just paid for the movie and we're going to release it for free a week later, kind of is what it felt like. I don't know if that's how they did it.
Yeah.
So don't quote me on that. What were some last films that you guys think we definitely should need to some last films of 2020 that you guys think need to be checked out?
Ooh. Well, it's kind of like you said, like we all saw maybe 2 to 4 movies in theater. Mm-hmm. Like that's kind of like the experience you take with you and you remember those movies. But a lot of the movies that I did watch were kind of like content. Mm-hmm. Like you said, like they just kind of came and went. so it's quite difficult almost to actually figure out what came out in 2020 and doesn't just get caught in the mesh of other movies I watched.
This whole year just kind of blurs together, so it's kind of hard to be like, oh yeah, that was this year. Or, oh, that was yesterday?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just one long, atrocious day.
Yeah. All right, so I guess we'll move on. So let's talk about TV shows. So what were some of your favorite TV shows of the year? I'll start us off. I think The Boys Season 2 was probably one of my favorite shows of the year. Just The Boys in general is such a great show. It kind of came out of nowhere on Netflix. I remember seeing trailers for it, and it's based off of just this kind of not well-known comic book that is nothing like the show at all. Maybe there's a couple of characters and stuff, but it's just the show is so much more toned down, and I think that's for the better. And I honestly end up enjoying it a little bit more, watching some of the more horrific acts a little bit more toned down in the show, which is funny to say because even the show has some pretty graphic elements in it. But it's definitely it definitely surpasses the comic book in my opinion, and I can't wait to see what they do in future seasons. So what about you guys? What were some of your favorite shows of 2020?
Well, I haven't seen The Boys season 2 yet, unfortunately, even though I keep saying I will. But in order to catch up for The Mandalorian during quarantine, I watched all 7 seasons of The Clone Wars, which took me a while, but I finally got there. And I must say, so season 7 was like the surprise final season that came out of nowhere after, I don't know, like a 4-year hiatus, 3-year hiatus, whatever. And so the first 4 episodes of Clone Wars it's the storyline of the Bad Batch, which is the new Disney Plus, whatever, standalone TV show. So that's fine. And that was good. It was alright. And then the next 4 episodes were the return of Ahsoka. I guess it's a light spoiler, but that's okay. And those were awful. I hated them. It was terrible. It was very slow. It was boring. It was just a mess. They tried to introduce characters that were supposed to be like really big characters in the last couple episodes, and it just made no sense, and it just dragged on. And then the last 4 episodes were some of like the finest Star Wars I've ever seen in my entire life. It was beautiful. They were like half-hour episodes or so, and every episode I was just like in pure bliss. It was incredible, and I recommend that everybody sees it, because I was just like cheering like a little schoolboy on my bed as I was watching it. It was perfect. So yeah, that's my top one, at least most memorable.
Yeah, for sure. Because I feel like Star Wars is just, other than The Mandalorian, it was kind of just The Mandalorian and the sequel trilogy. And I honestly think Star Wars was kind of not really planning. Star Wars didn't have a big year this year. There was not a lot of content for Star Wars other than The Mandalorian Season 2, which we'll probably talk about in a few minutes, and the Clone Wars Season 7. So just finally getting a conclusion to this show that's been on the air for, I want to say, decades. Just finally seeing a conclusion is just so satisfying to finally watch characters and watch it all wrap up. And yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. So it definitely was a bit of a surprise to see some Star Wars content this year, and it was really good to see that it was actually premium content. It wasn't just kind of, here's Star Wars, that's all you get for the year. It was actually planned, made, and then actual premium content that is worth watching, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So Sean, what was your... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say like a small thing. Like you were saying, there was no Star Wars movies this year. No Marvel movies either. Like Disney just really took a step back. Like they had Onward and Soul and Mulan, I guess. But, no big event movies. But it was nice seeing Star Wars like on the small screen. Like after the, in my opinion, very disappointing sequel trilogy. It was nice just, having Star Wars be so incredible again on the small screen. And I think 2020 really, it was an awesome year for Star Wars, I gotta say. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, for sure. So Sean, what was some of your shows of the year that you think shouldn't have been missed?
I'll agree with you on The Boys. I think that was just fantastic this year, and when it first started, first season's great as well, and yeah, it's definitely going to be exciting to see where that goes in the future. A show that I completely forgot that I watched this year, because I think it was earlier this year, was a show that, like, typically for me would not be a show I would watch. It would not grab my attention whatsoever. It's just because my parents were like, oh, you want to watch the show? And I'm like, not really, but I have nothing better to do. But it's a show, it's The Haunting of Bly Manor. And it's like a horror thing. And it's not like a super out there kind of concept. And I think it's only like 8 episodes. It's just like a mini series. They're not continuing it or anything. But it was actually surprisingly well done. Like the cinematography in it's really good. Like there's a lot of shots that are at night that just have this really... Typically, when you have like a night shot, you're going to have like a lot of like blue light and stuff, and that's usually how they light it. But their shots, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, it's actually dark somehow, but it doesn't, like, it's easy to see. Somehow they
Okay.
have like just the most subtle lighting. It's perfect. As for the content in the show, I do like that they kind of get most of the story done in the first 2 episodes, except for like the ending of it. And then most of the episodes, except for the finale, which wraps it all up, is kind of just like single parts of the story that explain why everything you just saw happened. And
Okay.
it's kind of cool how they do that, because they do it in such a way that you don't forget the main story on the way, because I feel like that could have been a huge issue if they didn't remind you of what you saw earlier. So yeah, I don't know. It was just a really good show, and it was just one I thought of. Yeah, it was really good.
See, I'm pretty sure that was done by Mike Flanagan, who did Haunting of Hill House, I
Yeah,
believe. Yeah, that was also directed by Mike
yeah, yeah.
Flanagan. Yeah, so he's
Yes.
probably one of the better horror directors working, and again, that's my opinion.
Hmm.
So it's just I didn't get to check it out, unfortunately. I will most likely watch it in the future, but just based off of what Mike Flanagan has done in the past with Doctor Sleep, Oculus, The Haunting of Hill House, it's definitely I can guarantee you it's definitely quality content, and yes, he really rocks the horror world with the whole cinematography and stuff. So it's just reassuring to hear that from someone that's actually watched the show. Um, so the other show I would say, just kind of moving back to our topic, I think the other show that I would recommend watching, which again kind of came out of nowhere for which I feel like it wasn't advertised enough. I remember just hopping onto Amazon Prime and just seeing the banner for the show, and that was Alex Rider. I was a big fan of the book as a kid, and I just remember reading. It was a little disappointing to see that Stormbreaker didn't get to make the first season, which is the first book, but I think Point Break is a great starting point, and I think it's a great book as well. So it was definitely worth a watch, and it did catch me off guard a bit. And just being a huge fan of the books as a kid, and just not expecting to see Alex Rider come back to the like film or TV, and then just having all of a sudden an Amazon Prime pretty high budgeted show being produced by them was just really exciting, and kind of brought me back as when I was a kid reading those books. And they are pretty faithful adaptations, I would say. So it's definitely worth a watch, in my opinion.
I think so. Also read all the Alex Rider books when I was younger, and just saw the movie. I gotta say, in every shot, you can just tell how much passion they had for this TV show. Like, they poured everything into it. Every shot is freaking immaculate, and the acting is great. The music is great. You can just tell they had an awesome time making this, and it just made it such a great experience watching it. It was awesome. I got it. Yeah, I agree. That's all I wanted to add.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Well,
do
good.
think they
So
could have done better on the advertising too, because I only saw like one ad for it. And it's like, I should check that out, and then I never saw anything about it again. So I
Yeah.
never
So
ended up
it,
doing that.
the only ads I ever saw was the banner. Like when you open Amazon Prime, you get like
Yeah,
the
that's the
banner
only
of
thing
the
I saw.
most recent show, and that's all I saw. And I thought, oh, I hope that's based off the book. So I clicked on it, and I was really pleasantly surprised. I was really pleasantly surprised. So
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there. I was just saying, like, it was released in Britain exclusively for like 2 months, and then because it got a lot of traction, it was released worldwide. I think that might have something to do with the advertisement.
okay, okay. So the other show I want to talk about that I think this technically wasn't released 2020. I don't think, but it came to Netflix in 2020, so I'm going to count it. It was Close Enough by J.G. Quintel, I believe his name is. He's the creator of Regular Show, and basically, I'm a big fan of the of Regular Show. I really loved how it was made. How I really loved that show quite a bit. So basically, Close Enough is just an adult version of Regular Show, and I think it was definitely worth a watch. It was really good to see, because I think this was going to be an HBO Max exclusive, and it just kind of hopped onto Netflix one day, and I was just really really happy I got to see it, because I did not think I would personally get to see it in my house. So I'm very happy that I got to see that show, and it was definitely worth it. Um, it's really funny, really really well written. really great voice acting and really great animation. So it's definitely worth a watch if you haven't checked it out. Kind of more, yeah, and I would say more of a sleeper hit because this show got advertised back in like 2015, like back when regular show was kind of ending. It got advertised, I'd say maybe a year after it ended, and the show has just been on hiatus constantly. So to finally see that it has a home on some platforms is really reassuring to see, and I really hope we get to see a season 2 in the future.
Mm-hmm. I haven't seen it personally, but I'll keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, no, same, actually.
One more thing, sorry, before we go to, I'm assuming, inevitably, The Mandalorian. Tiger King. Did you guys watch Tiger King?
I watched maybe, like, my parents were watching it, and I just happened to stumble in upon an episode or two, but I didn't watch it beginning to end. I just remember walking in and this dude's calling a tiger a bitch and shooting at it with a pistol, and I was like, what the hell is happening? Like, what is going on? And I heard it was just the craziest like show ever. So I unfortunately didn't get to watch it beginning to end, but I could tell it was just seemed like a train wreck.
Yeah, I only did watch like the first like 3 episodes, and then I didn't return to it, but I heard about it for sure.
Yeah, so I seem to have all these movie milestones, but Tiger King, it almost seemed like, I don't know, it seemed like worldwide we were about to go into lockdown, quarantine, whatever, and then Tiger King emerged on Netflix. And it almost seemed like this unanimous shared experience that everybody was watching Tiger King throughout the first 2 weeks of quarantine, and it was everywhere. And it's such a crazy show to sum up such a crazy year. It's just, it is insane. So yeah, I would recommend watching it all the way through. It's just nuts. It's almost like how, but
just
somehow
like
it happened.
Almost like a
It's
car
like-
wreck you can't look away from. Like that's what I've heard the show's been referred to as. But
And then
I mean, Joe Exotic kind of looks like a car wreck, so
yeah, you're not wrong. And then what? Cheryl Bacon, I think her name is. The
I think
other,
so.
I mean, you gotta watch the show to understand it. But she's, I think she's performing into like American Idol or something. And
my
the more you
God.
know about the story, the more like how atrocious and ridiculous that is. It's just so mind-boggling almost. It's just an incredible show. It just seemed like such an awesome way to start off 2020 and lockdown. It's just nuts.
all right, so I guess moving on, like you said, to the inevitable Mandalorian season 2, I would say that it was it was a great season, and we'll probably move a bit into spoiler territory here. So if you haven't watched season 2 of The Mandalorian, definitely click away, mute it. If go watch the show, it's fantastic. But I definitely feel like it was, like with Soul, I think it was probably the show to kind of watch. Like it was the Star Wars content of the year, in my opinion. Like the Clone Wars this is the 7 seasons running. I don't think every Star Wars, well, that's not fair, but I don't think that everyone has been caught up to the Clone Wars. I feel like The Mandalorian, everyone's watched the first season. It's not a really harsh watch, 8 episodes a piece. They're released weekly, so you have a lot of time to kind of catch up before the next episode. I feel like it's the Star Wars content to kind of be watching right now. And I feel like they did a really well job, especially with the latter half of the episodes. I do feel it started off a little slowly for season 2, whereas The Boys was kind of, it was started and it was going constantly with story. I feel like The Mandalorian had a little bit of a slower start. That's not to say that it's bad. It's just to say that I was expecting a little bit more kind of stuff happening beginning to end. There was just a couple of episodes that felt a little bit slow. And again, this is my opinion, but I feel like it was definitely the show to be watching this year, and I feel like a lot of people did, and especially with the ending, I feel it was just so satisfying to see, and I'm going to spoil the ending here, but it was just so satisfying to see Luke Skywalker at the end, and it was just like, that's that Luke Skywalker that we saw was the Luke Skywalker I was hoping we'd see in episode 8. Just him crushing a robot with the Force, and just this powerful, optimistic guy, and it honestly gave me chills when I saw him walk in, and I was just seeing his X-wing and stuff. It was a fantastic reveal, a fantastic kind of twist. I think it was really well done, and I think that's the Luke Skywalker that I hope we see more of in season 3 and in just Star Wars in general. So I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Yeah, whoever wants to go first, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Okay, so if we're jumping right to the finale, it was awesome. As soon as I saw that single X-Wing, I was like, that's either going to be like one big fleet behind it, or it's going to be Luke. And then it was just that, and I was like, oh, damn. And then you see him go through the hallway, and it's just super reminiscent of the ending of Rogue One, where Darth Vader is just slicing rebels apart. And it's just so awesome the way Luke takes care of these, well, doesn't take care of them, absolutely destroys these Dark Troopers, and then comes out of nowhere to get Grogu. It was just so awesome. And I think, backtracking a little bit to the way we talked about this experience, I think now that it's like released weekly, it kind of, you watch an episode, you get to think about it, you get excited about the next one. It makes it a little bit more memorable, I guess, the longevity of it. Makes it a bit more of an event. So
yeah, for sure. Just... I know what you like. It feels more of like this month is the month of Star Wars. Like they did the same thing with The Boys, where instead of it just being, oh, this day is the day of The Mandalorian, because everyone's going to binge in one day. It just feels like, oh, this month is the Mandalorian month, and everyone's on the same page who's watched the episode. No one's ahead, no one's behind. The show's level with everyone. No one has a certain edge over certain people. Everyone just is on the same page. Everyone's theorizing the same way. I think it's a really kind of smarter way to do things. And yeah, I feel like that's definitely a where we're probably going to start seeing more shows start doing. Just with the popularity of the show in general. I'd love to hear your other guys' thoughts on that.
I mean, like more shows doing that kind of scheduled upload of doing like a week rather than just all at once, I think makes a lot of sense overall. Like just for most shows, because yeah, like that's the thing that I always find I have a problem with is like I like to watch just however many episodes I feel like watching. I don't like to binge a whole show like right off the bat if that's an option. So usually I'll like talk to somebody about a show and they'll be like, oh yeah, when this happens, it's like, oh yeah, no I don't at all, because I'm on the second episode and you're on like the 16th one. It's like, I mean, it's a cool option to have that too, but it's harder to have a conversation about a show when it's like that. So yeah.
And then, of course, sorry, we got to talk about Boba Fett. Like,
oh yeah,
incredible,
obviously,
incredible. I'm very excited about the book of Boba Fett. I hope we got to kind of, dig into his backstory a little bit, see how he survived the Sarlacc pit, all that good stuff. Yeah. I'm just very excited about that, and I think it's the actor who played Jango Fett in the Clone Wars, like the Attack of the Clones. Sorry. Is the actor who plays Boba Fett in Mandalorian.
Yeah, no, it's
awesome, considering they're all technically clones, which is just so cool.
It's the same actor all the way through, yeah.
That's
cool.
Awesome.
So any last thoughts on The Mandalorian? Just before we move on here, any last minute thoughts, any last minute comments on it?
The return of Ahsoka was awesome. And then,
absolutely.
Of course, Mando trying to use the force of Grogu, and like he's like Grogu, it's like bah, Grogu. I don't know, that little back and forth. I don't know, that was so cute and memorable. It was awesome. That's all I got.
Yeah, to say. It was great to finally get a name instead of everyone just calling him Baby Yoda. And I find it personally kind of funny because walking through the stores and looking at all the merchandise, they just straight up the merchandise all says Baby Yoda. So now either they're just going to keep it there or they're going to have to all recall it and rename it all Grogu, which I found was personally pretty funny. It was good. Yeah, it was good to have just to finally have a name to him. And yeah, seeing Ahsoka was honestly pretty awesome. It was honestly just a pretty cool moment to just finally see her with the two silver lightsabers and stuff. So that was definitely fulfilling. Um, just in general, any movies, TV shows that you saw that didn't get released in 2020, uh, but that you just happened to see in 2020, didn't happen to be released during the year.
Well, there's the ongoing show that technically started in 2020, but it's still going right now, which is The Stand. Um, I've been watching that. So far, I think again, it's only like 2 or 3 episodes that are out right now, but so far it's really really good. I'm having a good time. I mean, it's not explained half the stuff that it's shown on screen yet, so for me not knowing any of the source material whatsoever, I'm confused as all hell. But hopefully it gets all kind of clearer as it goes on. But it's been good so far, and I like what it's done.
No, absolutely. So I'm currently reading the book, and I think we can do a whole episode on Stephen King because I have a whole rant I want to talk about Stephen King for. But I feel like Stephen King is kind of the horror author, and I feel like a lot of his movies, not not pointing out films, but I feel like some movies don't do his work justice, in my opinion. Like It Chapter 1 and 2, for example, just in my opinion felt like summer blockbusters. They didn't feel like great, like epic films, which is what the novels were. They were like these fantastic, like 1,000-page books that had so much character and just memorable characters, memorable moments spread throughout these characters' lives, and I just felt like you didn't get to see that in these films. Not to say that they're bad, but just that I don't feel personally that they did Stephen King justice, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. Again, I can talk about that for hours, but I'll just keep it as brief as I can. Yeah, Bart, what about you? What film, TV show that you saw during the year that wasn't technically released in 2020, but you'd like to talk about if you have one?
Well, actually, this one was released in 2020, or at least it started in 2019, I think, and continued into 2020. The Watchmen TV show by Regina King. Awesome. If you're a fan of Watchmen, you even like the Zack Snyder director's cut, the books. It's an incredible show, and it's just a fun continuation after. I guess this is going to spoil Watchmen a little bit, but like after Rorschach is dead, Ozymandias has kind of been ostracized a bit, well, quite a bit, and the whole event at New York. It's just such a awesome continuation, and I'm really excited to see Regina King's One Night in Miami, which comes out next week, I think, which is entirely different than Watchmen, but awesome nonetheless. So that's one of my standouts. I'd recommend it.
All right, for sure. So I think probably my film, mine's a film. I watched quite a bit of older movies and a lot of older content. And I think the film that I had, or I guess I'll stick with TV shows. I think the TV show that I had was R.L. Stein's The Haunting Hour. I started watching that again just as background noise, but I feel like I grew up with Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark, and those are still some of my favorite TV shows. And I feel like that kind of recaptured the magic that I felt as I was a kid watching those shows. Like I love R.L. Stein, I love the books, I love Are You Afraid of the Dark? I think, and even as an adult, some of the episodes, I won't lie, did kind of scare me a bit, as if I can admit that, but there was some episodes, even for a young adult show, was a little stretching the limit in my opinion. But I think it's definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it before. It's a ton of fun, even if you just have it on in the background and you're just popping up. It's still a ton of fun to watch. And then the film that I want to talk about is Akira Kurosawa's High and Low. I started watching a bunch of Akira Kurosawa films over lockdown, and I haven't watched them all, but I think High and Low was a standout in my opinion. It was fantastic, just all the way through. It's a super long film. I think it's about a little under 3 hours, but it never feels like it's running at 3 hours. There's never a point in the film where it feels like it's explaining stuff that has already been shown. There's not a lot of harsh exposition. It's a lot of concise, really well written dialogue. I mean, I was reading it through subtitles, but it was really fantastic. It was really well directed, really well blocked in the scenes, and it was just a really great film. And it just kind of is, to get kind of a little more passionate here about filmmaking. It just kind of reminded me why I kind of love films and love filmmaking. It was a really fantastic film, and I do recommend checking it out if you haven't seen it. So that just it was just a fantastic film in the end of the day here. Any films you guys watch that you would recommend?
Really quickly, if I can interject. Okay, so the theater I worked at, they were, because Bong Joon-ho's Parasite was such a success, I don't know, they just did a showing of Memories of Murder, which is a 2003 film, and that movie is incredible. And just you talking about blocking, there's this scene that plays out in a bar, and there's 3 different conversations happening at the same time, and not like, shouting over each other, but the 2 in the front kind of disperse, and then the second conversation comes in front, and that kind of disperses, and then the real conversation, the real topic of the whole argument kind of comes out in front to the last person. And it's just really cool watching it almost just like fall away and make way for the real conversation, because all the rest of it's just kind of filler, but intentional filler. And it uses really like great character blocking. It's just awesome, and it was fun seeing that in theaters. One of his earlier films after Parasite.
All right, yeah, for sure, and Parasite's a great film, and I definitely recommend. Again, we can do this in a future episode, but I definitely recommend watching more South Korean films. When I was in high school, I went on a complete binge and watched tons and tons of foreign films, and I just ended up really appreciating the films they make in South Korea. So I think whoever's listening, just definitely recommend any South Korean films by there's just a lot of great filmmaking going on down there. So Sean, it looked like you were looking something up. What do you have to say here?
Yeah, I was trying to think of a film I watched this year, and I can't remember the name of it. It was some sort of time travel film, and it was kind of enjoyable. It wasn't the best movie I'd ever watched, but it was kind of enjoyable. But it made me think of another film that I forgot about, which is also a time travel film that came out this year. And I think it's kind of being advertised for like a kind of re-release of it, because when it first came out, the advertising wasn't amazing for it, and that was Palm Springs. Yeah,
I did check that out,
and that was just a really good movie. I don't know. That was a movie that literally I was like, oh, I'll watch that. I don't know if that's going to be enjoyable, and it shocked me more than I thought it was going to. But I mean, I don't want to say too much without spoiling any films, because I'm just going to recommend people check them out. But I mean, it has Andy Samberg in it. J.K. Simmons is in it as well. And yeah, it's if you enjoy anything that's kind of, I mean, if you enjoyed Pop Star Never Stop Poppin', then I mean, that's kind of a similar thing. So if you've enjoyed that, then definitely check that one out. It's got that kind of humor to it.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely worth checking out. I did check that one out a couple of weeks ago. It was a really fun watch. It was beginning to end constantly entertaining as well. Mm-hmm. So if you do happen to have an hour and a half of it, it's not a super long watch. If you do happen to have it, it's definitely worth checking out. So just to avoid this running on too long, let's hop to our last topic here, which is video games. So there's definitely, I mean, I think out of video games, TV shows, and movies, I think I definitely played a lot more video games than I normally would in a year, and that's just because of all the free time I had. I'm not going to start this one off, Sean. I'm gonna let you start this one off, because I think you're probably the more so gamer of all of us. So I'll let you start it off. What was your kind of standout game of 2020?
Well, you know what? I'm going to say, so my game of the year for me, just because it was the most interesting experience I've had for a game in a while, was Half-Life Alyx. That
that's
is
cool.
like my game of the year for sure, because like doing something in VR that's made specifically for VR and knowing exactly what to do. Like Valve has taken, I think it was like 4 years of development time for the game just to get everything right. I mean, they had a guy they sent out to give a presentation to a university on how doors work, and it was an hour long. Like, and that's all he talked about was how to get a
Oh
door
my
handle to work in
god.
VR.
Damn.
So,
Jeez.
I mean, and fair enough because doors surprisingly work very confusingly in a VR game. But they figured it out. It was a great game though. A really good story. I was never bored for a second, and oh man, just explaining like if you have not played a VR game of like a high caliber like that, and there's really only a few that exist. I recommend that if at any point you have that opportunity, even if it's for like 10 minutes, just take the time to do it because it was fantastic. Looked great,
And,
sounded
and
great.
and kind of the other part about that game was just that the fact that it was Half-Life. Like a game,
Yeah.
Half-Life 3 has been talked about as is it ever going to get released, and is Valve ever going to do something about Half-Life 3? And the fact that I'm not a big Half-Life or Valve kind of follower, but I think it kind of came out of nowhere. I just remember all of a sudden Half-Life Alyx came out, and then the fact that it was a VR game, and these developers are known for kind of pushing the boundaries with games and stuff is was pretty cool. And not being a very big fan of, or not knowing too much about these games, just even seeing the trailers and knowing that there was so much hype and so much of a big fandom around this kind of universe was, I mean, it kind of caught off on me a little bit. So yeah, it was definitely a pretty interesting point that we actually got to see a continuation of Half-Life, if I can say, even though it wasn't technically Half-Life 3.
I mean, it
Bart, what
does.
about you? What about, oh,
I was just gonna say it does definitely help any person that is a Half-Life fan. If you are somebody who is waiting for like years for Half-Life 3 to come out, and this the not to spoil anything, but the game does definitely help out those that have been waiting and want hope in the series for the future. That's all I'll say though.
for sure, for sure. Okay, Bart, what about your game? What was your game of the year?
Um, so this unfortunately a little bit of a story. So okay, early January, games were pretty sparse. I played everything I wanted to play that came out in Christmas, whatnot. So I was looking for some indie stuff, and I picked up the definitive edition of Ori and the Blind Forest, and it was absolutely incredible. And it was the first game I 100%ed, and it was just stunning all the way through. And then a month later or so, around my birthday actually, The Will of the Wisps came out, which is the sequel, and they kind of integrated this combat system because the first one was kind of lacking that. You didn't really have agency around your combat, but in the sequel they kind of brought it in and just had more of grand scope, and it was just awesome just playing those two back to back. If you've never played it, you should definitely check it out. Even just go on YouTube and just listen to the soundtrack or just look at some of the images. It's just stunning, and it's made by, oh, I wish I could tell you, but around like maybe 10 developers all over the world, and for such a high caliber indie game, and they all just kind of, I don't know, collect their data in one place all over the world. It's just awesome. It's just such a fun experience. It's an awesome platformer, and that is definitely my game of the year.
I feel bad
No,
I
for
didn't
sure.
get it on sale. I missed it,
Pick it up.
but I'm
Oh,
adding it to my wish list, and
yes.
I will get it.
It's it's kind of like a Pixar movie, but as a game.
Mhm.
Like the story is pretty simplistic, I guess, without knocking it. But it's awesome in its simplicity. At least the story. The gameplay is really quite intricate.
All right, so I'm going to just take the spotlight here. I think my game of the year was probably Persona 5 Royal. And that game, I mean, I almost didn't pick it up just because I've played Persona 5. I've played it all the way through, and I felt like usually the studio that makes this game, Atlas, does this. They'll release the same game, but a little bit touched up for the next system, and Persona 5 Royal just didn't seem like that touched up. It just seemed almost like just kind of, it wasn't on next gen, it was just for PS4 again, and it almost didn't seem like there was going to be that much content, but I honestly cannot remember. I ended up picking it up anyways, and next thing I know, I was basically just played the whole game all the way through again, fell in love with it. They've added, honestly, a whole game's worth of content in there. Persona 5 in general is like 100-hour game. Like, so it's a fairly decent game, and then they added, I think, like a ton more to the actual game. And the thing that I think was kind of clever that they did was they kind of sprinkled in new story elements throughout the base story. So if you've played Persona 5, I think there's kind of like a fair amount in the main story sprinkled in that it keeps it fresh and kind of new. And then just at the end, you unlock kind of new semester of the game and some post-game stuff, which is just really, really fun and a totally new reason to play it. So it was definitely worth playing. Kept me occupied for, again, 100 and so hours. So definitely worth buying if you do, even if you did enjoy the first game and you do have it. I definitely recommend picking it up again. That was probably my favorite game of the year. Any other games you guys want to talk about?
2020 exclusive?
Yeah, let's stick with 2020 for now. Okay, I'll go again. Ghost of Tsushima was a really good game. I mean, I love Kurosawa films, and just kind of seeing almost like a Kurosawa film put in a game was really amazing. Just to see that happen, and the fact that it was so good. The story was incredible. The combat was incredible. The way the game played felt really good, really fresh. And it even had, I mean, Sucker Punch is known for having these kind of branching story arcs where you can either pick good and evil. And I don't know, I've heard some people say it's a bit of a negative, but I think it's honestly a bit more of a positive, that it doesn't force you to play in a way that kind of to get the good ending or the bad ending. It just leaves you, I believe, again, maybe spoilers, it does just leave you one choice at the end that forces that gives you two different endings, which I think was kind of neat of them, because I feel like a lot of developers will put two ways to play the game, and it's either play it this way, play it that way. You're going to get two different endings based on it, just basing it off of their previous games like Infamous Second Son and the Infamous games. So it was just nice to have the variation in gameplay, and it was just a ton of fun. Really interesting story, and definitely worth a buy if you haven't picked it up already.
Mm-hmm. Game's pretty
definitely
nice to look at too. Very pretty.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
One little thing to add. Sorry about that. In Ghost of Tsushima, Kurosawa mode. So I started the game off playing in Kurosawa mode, and it's incredibly difficult when you're just getting used to it.
Yeah.
But like post game or like near the end of the game, if you switch it to Kurosawa mode, you just feel like such a badass, and it's incredible because you're so used to it and all the abilities you have, and it's just incredible. But I would not recommend starting it off on Kurosawa, because it's just
I'd recommend.
In my experience, kind of ruined the initial.
I'd recommend a second playthrough on Kurosawa mode, because I did the same thing, and there's a lot of unique coloring in the game that you do kind of miss out in that mode, but either way, no matter how you play the game, it's still worth it, I would say. Any other games?
For 2020, no. Honestly, surprisingly, I kept most of my 2020 wish list until I got the Xbox Series X, which I'll probably get in 5 years from now or something. We'll see.
Yeah, jeez. Other games that I kind of written down here was Animal Crossing. It's not a perfect game, but it kept me occupied. It kept me sane, to say the least. You know, it gave me something to do, especially because it came out so close to when lockdown started. It just kept you doing stuff, I would say, and I think that it was just a game that just kept me sane, honestly. Because honestly, I feel like without it, I would have gone a little bit more crazier than I did. I know me and you played it quite a bit, Sean, and I want to say I had part in introducing it to some of our other friend group, but I don't think that was me at all. But yeah, I feel like it did kind of create a more of a bond between some of the people that were in our friend group before, and it did keep me kind of in contact with people that I didn't think I would stay in contact with much after while we were in lockdown. So it was definitely, I think, worth a buy, I think.
I mean,
what are your
yeah, like I really liked the game. Like it's really good. Having been like a player of Animal Crossing New Leaf as well, I'll say it's good, but I think that New Leaf had some one-ups on it for sure. Just like considering that this is probably, ironically to say, but it's probably the best time to play an Animal Crossing game for a lot of people, to have the most time available to play it. It is probably the Animal Crossing with like the least amount to do, which is like, kind of unfortunate. Not that it's terrible. A lot of it is just because stuff isn't added in updates until they come out. But I still have this kind of problem, and I think a lot of players do, where you'll like do everything for the update, complete it, and then you'll be like, okay, well, that's about it. And it kind of sucks that it's that way. It's cool that like an update comes out and you're like, oh, there's so much to do. Like that's a nice feeling, but then you're completed it and you're like, oh, well, that sucks. Because like New Leaf and old games didn't really have that. A lot of the stuff you had to do was like a lot more tedious, but in a way that felt really rewarding when you got those kind of things. So, I mean, New Horizons is still fantastic, but I wish it had a little bit more substance to it, I guess. But it is still really good.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely feel like it was like you said, I definitely feel like there was some stuff they could fix, like buying stacks of items, and these are complaints that have been around for since the game's launch, pretty much. And I mean, we can probably do a whole episode of just talking about this game, but I do feel like there is some stuff they could fix, because I remember just getting the holiday DIYs, and that took me to get all of them was probably a straight
forever.
Like 6 hours. Honestly, it was just tedious, and you're just staring at the screen, and they could definitely use some updates to fix some stuff. But and I think it was, like I said before, I do stand that it is worth the buy, even if you can get by some tedious work, especially during the time it came out. It was definitely worth the buy. So anyways, that's all I have to say on Animal Crossing.
Yeah, so I was just going to get in there. You talked about Animal Crossing, and as soon as you said that, all I could think about was Doom Eternal releasing on the same day. I think it was right on quarantine or like right before quarantine. But like just sitting alone in your room, having absolutely nothing to do, everything is closed, no libraries to go to, nothing to study, just having that immense, I don't know, feeling of power and badassery playing Doom Eternal. I think it's exactly what I needed to get through the first lockdown. It was incredible. I did, what is it, the meat hook, I think is what it's called. Incredible addition. It just really ups the movement and versatility in your actions. But I gotta say, the Marauder, I don't know, I might be bandwagoning here, but he kind of just stood against everything that Doom Eternal, well, Doom in general, stood for, like the fast movement. He just blocks everything. You gotta get in like this precise place to attack him. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've played it. If you haven't, you might not. But when you come across him, it's just incredibly frustrating, incredibly hard. But in general, Doom Eternal, awesome game. Came out at the perfect time, and I loved it. And not a bug in sight, which is really impressive considering how fast it runs and how beautiful it is.
So I just have two more games here to talk about, and I think so the next game came out with just the most amount of controversy, and I cannot believe how much it honestly had. And some of it I agreed with, some of it I was bandwagoning, and I just felt, and I felt bad about myself and about the developers, and I honestly felt like I had to play the game to really experience, and that's obviously, of course, The Last of Us 2. I definitely felt like when it came out, I jumped on the bandwagon when the spoilers came out and people were kind of trashing the game and like, oh, cancel your pre-orders, and I definitely jumped on the bandwagon.
Well, you got me to cancel my pre-order.
Oh yeah, I was not, and like when the game came out, I was still adamant on not playing it, and then I think I watched some video that explains, like, I can't remember the full video, but I just remember it just thinking, you know what, I have the spare cash, like, screw it, I'm gonna just buy it and play it all the way through, see if it really is that bad. And honestly, it was a good time. Like, it wasn't perfect. It's not a perfect game. It's not a perfect score. It's definitely got its flaws, and we could fill an entire episode with the flaws that it has in the whole time I can talk about this game, but I'm going to keep it brief. It was a really fun time. I enjoyed start to finish. There was some parts that I wasn't a big fan of, but they didn't really linger and they didn't last too long. It had a very good start. The ending I wasn't the biggest fan of. I think it could have been a bit better, but I think it was definitely better than people have given it credit for. And I think if you are one of those people like me that jumped on the bandwagon and is just saying, I'm not going to play it, I definitely recommend giving it a shot, especially because they're putting it on sale. I believe they are. I definitely just recommend playing it all. Just give it a shot. I'm pretty sure you'll be more than pleasantly surprised by it.
Mm-hmm. Sean, if it's okay if I take like 30 seconds here. I was just going to say, outside of its narrative, The Last of Us 2 is a technical masterpiece. It is absolutely stunning. And the music and the sound design, it's just... And the mocap, it's just out of this world. And if you just completely disattach it from the narrative is still strong, but that's where most of the controversies lie. If you just take it as like just that, it's immaculate. And I just wanted to add that.
For sure. So the last game I'm going to talk about, Sean, sorry, did you have anything you wanted to say about The Last of Us? Or?
No, I mean, that's pretty much all it's covered. Really, the only thing I would maybe add is just the fact that it's, other than, like, the narrative, for sure, like, it looks fantastic. I've heard the gameplay is fantastic. I haven't got around to playing it yet, so I definitely want to, considering that everything I've heard, once the barrage of complaints came out, initially, I've just heard it plays really well, and it looks really good. So I've been planning to get that. I haven't got around to it yet.
No, for sure. And the last kind of good game I would recommend you check out from this year was it kind of came out of nowhere. And I think it was kind of one of the last games to be released this year was Phoenix Immortal Rising. And again, I just happened to pick it up, and it's a Breath of the Wild clone, but like Breath of the Wild's a great game, and honestly, I mean, I've played Breath of the Wild quite a bit. I've been through it quite a few times. I feel like if you want more Breath of the Wild, this is your ticket to get more Breath of the Wild. And I feel like there's some unique elements about it, like the combat in this game I find is a little bit stronger than Breath of the Wild. I find it a little bit more enjoyable. I also find that the story, not that the story in Breath of the Wild is bad, but I do really enjoy the story of this game. It's really uniquely told, and it honestly has me kind of chuckling to myself every now and again, because it is a really fun game. And it did kind of come out of nowhere, I found. I remember having it advertised to me a couple times, and I honestly thought it was a mobile game for the first couple times, and then a couple weeks later I just see it on the store, and I'm like, well, why not pick it up, right? So I was really pleasantly surprised by it, and I do recommend, if you haven't played it, to definitely check it out, give it a shot.
It's Ubisoft, right? Because I saw it come up a couple times.
Yeah.
But I just never really...
Yeah, Ubisoft.
I also thought it was a mobile game. Just the artwork like that big like
Yeah,
screen cap, like the
definitely got that
artwork.
look
It
to
seemed
it.
like it would be a mobile game, and I just never checked it out. But I feel like I might now.
there was definitely like a feeling. I don't know. I just when I saw the ads, it felt like a type of mobile game. I'm not sure why. I was just like, oh, but I no, it's definitely worth a watch.
Considering that like Nintendo right now too doesn't have like really much on the horizon for anything like Breath of the Wild 2,
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely a good reason to play it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So next topic, let's do what were some of our biggest disappointments of the year? Game wise, film wise, TV show wise. I'm sure we have some. I definitely do. I'm gonna start it off. That was Cyberpunk 2077 on last gen consoles. I was just so excited for this game. You know, I've waited since the first trailer. I was a big fan. Watching all the advertisements all the way through, I thought I was going to get more than what I expected. And when it came out, it didn't run great. I mean, I play on last gen. I play on Xbox One, so it wasn't a fantastic release on that. I've heard it was fantastic on PC, and people are enjoying it on PC and next gen consoles. But I just personally I was not thrilled by that, and I was honestly really disappointed by that. And I feel like it definitely needed to be a little bit longer in development, and that's about it. I mean, what's said about the game has been said already. I feel there's probably way better videos that go into much more detail than we can, but I know, Sean, you played it on PC. What was your experience with the game?
Yeah, so probably a couple days ago, I basically finished everything I could finish. I did all the gigs that they had, the side jobs, the assaults they had around the map. After doing all of that, um, it's kind of weird because now the game's in a state where there's like really no substance to it at all, and there's really no reason to keep playing other than for like if you want to get a different ending. I ended up doing that. Um, but I mean, it's kind of enjoyable. It lacks a lot of things that were advertised about it. I think they're getting a little like potential lawsuits about that as well, which is like oof.
Oh yeah,
That's
this is like the second most controversial game of the year. I
yeah.
feel.
Uh,
Um,
it also doesn't run that well, even for me
oh
on
jeez.
PC. I mean, it runs okay most of the time, but there's times where like there's the one area, the like kind of downtown Arasaka area that's just like I don't know what they did, but I think they just cranked the population to like max on
Oh
there. There's
jeez.
so many NPCs there, but it's like it cannot handle it. It really can't. Like I'm getting like below 30 frames. I don't even have RTX on,
Oh
Oof.
my goodness.
and I'm running at 1080. Like oh, it does not run.
Yeah, it was. I was a little saddened by the fact that it was such a flop of a game, and
Mm.
I didn't return it. I feel like CG Project Red is a little bit um, adamant on fixing it and making it the best game it can be. I feel like they're that kind of company, so I am going to hold on to my copy, and especially because they did say they were going to release um, the next gen console, like the next gen version, for free. I definitely am going to hold on to that until I can get a next gen copy of the game. Bart, what about you? Did you have any disappointments of the year? Again, film, TV, or video games?
Um, Yikes! Yeah, that's a big one for me. I guess if we go back to TV for a minute, The Outsider, like the Stephen King adaptation, it started off incredible. Like the first 3 episodes were immaculate. Well, I'm using that a lot, but whatever. They were great. And then slowly, I think it's like a 10 episode series, and in the next 5 episodes, maybe even 6, until the finale, it just dragged on. Like it just completely lost momentum. And I don't know, it was just incredibly disappointing because it started off so strong. And I think it was also on HBO, like one of those weekly episode releases. So I was like really, I was really there. I was really encapsulated in it. And then, yeah, I think that's my biggest disappointment. It just lost everything. And then even the finale, it was, in my opinion, quite weak. Like I haven't even read the book yet, so maybe it was really faithful. I don't know. If it was, I probably wouldn't read the book. So I don't know. That's just me. Like the acting, if nothing else, the acting was awesome. It was great. Everybody just really shone, but the rest, it just, yeah, it's kind of whatever. I just finished it because I wanted to finish it, but other than that, I just kind of watched it.
All right.
That's just me.
So yeah, so I guess we're kind of running out of time here, so I guess we'll move on to our last topic. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was what were our hopes for this year, 2021. What are we most excited for this year? I know there's not a ton that has been announced yet, but I feel like if things start to cool down, we could start to see a little bit of a better year, as in with media and as in movies, films, and video games and stuff. So I feel like we can get a little bit of a better year this year, hopefully, and also next gen being released last year. So I think we'll definitely be in for a good year. So what are some of your most anticipated games? I'll send this one off to you guys first.
Sean, you want to take that for now?
Yeah, I guess I can. I mean, I could either say just looking forward to like more of the movies that have been held back to hopefully come out this year. I mean, you got the James Bond movie that's still not out. I literally just remembered that like the other day, and I was like, wow, that's still not out somehow. Figured they would have just caved in and released it on a streaming service at this point, but guess not. And they held back that Ryan Reynolds movie, that Free Guy movie. And not that I expected that movie to be a masterpiece or anything, but I want to see it. I want to watch it. It's still not out. And there's just a lot of movies in that limbo of not being released in a lot of studios. I think also there was the Monster Hunter movie that came out.
No, that did end up getting released.
Yeah, I know it got released, but it's not like on streaming services though.
Yeah,
it's like only in theaters. It's like, okay, sure, yeah.
Who's seeing that? Like,
yeah, I'm not going to theaters to watch it. I don't imagine it's good enough to warrant that.
I wouldn't.
I gotta say, I'll take the next one here. I think my biggest hope for next year would probably be, like you said, would probably be Dune. Denis Villeneuve's Dune. I think that got pushed to this year. I really hope we get to see it this year. I'm a big fan of the book. I'm a big Denis Villeneuve fan. I think he could potentially do some great things with it. I know the book's pretty big. It's a pretty. I think it's a really hard thing, a really hard book to adapt personally. But I think he's smart enough and has proved himself with his previous films that he's able to do it and capable of doing it. The other thing I'm most excited for is probably game-wise is probably the next Monster Hunter game. I can't remember the title of it. It's coming to Nintendo Switch, so fingers crossed that's great. And other than that, that's about all that's been released so far in my mind that I'm most excited for. So Bart, if you want to finish us off here.
Yeah, so I just kind of got like a little hit list, I suppose. So WandaVision comes out week and a half. I'm incredibly excited for that. I, weirdly enough, actually, I don't know, studied is a strong word, but read and discussed the comic book in one of my classes, so I'm really excited for that. I'm excited for Visions. I'm excited for Obi-Wan starting production, like the little Star Wars story.
Visions, yep.
I'm excited to get a next-gen console for Cyberpunk. My roommate and I watched every single James Bond movie in anticipation for No Time to Die, and then this happened, so that's unfortunate. And then finally, most of all, I'm not even sure if it's going to come out in 2021. Who knows when it's going to come out? But Elden Ring, I'm incredibly excited for that.
Yeah.
So hopefully that comes out, I don't know, maybe Christmas. Maybe, who knows? It's not been much news
Hopefully.
about it, but
Hopefully.
that's been on my radar for quite some time now, and I really hope that it's
And
just
sorry, you just
that's
kind of
awesome.
reminded me. Sorry, you just kind of reminded me of two other things. I just hope we get some news on Metroid Prime 4 and Bayonetta 3. They were announced so long ago. I just hope we get anything, a little bit of news on Metroid Prime 4 especially. Just about like, hey, they're still in development. Hey, they're coming out this year. Maybe even some footage if possible, but those are probably, yeah. And with that, I would say we're pretty good to wrapping up. I mean, unless you guys have some last things to say here.
I think I'm good. We hit a nice hour and 20 minutes. I think that's all right for a first
All right.
episode, personally.
Awesome. So yeah, that concludes the very first episode of EchoVideo Podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you in the next episode. All right. See you later.